Excellent. Thank you so much for coming out today. My name is Jarett Wieselman. I work for BuzzFeed, and I'm here to lead us in a conversation with today's special guest, Suits star Patrick J. Adams. Give him a hand of applause. It's all ready for you. That's you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming out in the middle of the day.
Congratulations on the show. Mid-season 6, 7 to come. I mean, is that strange? I mean, I feel like I met you right before season 1 started, and we are now look exactly the
Best
same,
friends.
but it is 6 years later.
Yeah.
Is it strange to
Younger.
know that?
I think you look younger.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I mean, 6 years working on the show, is that just a strange thing to wrap your head around, or has it felt like that?
It's completely insane. The only thing, we've become so close and we're such family, and we care a lot about each other, and we still get along, which I think is maybe rare in this business. So that makes sense because I can chart our as a relationship, but as a job, that's so rare that I think anything in this industry, especially as an actor, we're so used to hopping around between different things all the time that it's really hard to wrap my head around the blessing that is employment for that long, but also how far the story has come. I mean, I'll go back and watch. Not that I ever do this because I can't watch myself, but if I do catch a piece of first season and I'm like, we are completely different human beings. The show's completely different. It's just evolved in this incredible way that I don't think I'll fully understand, or fans of the show will fully understand until, it's way over and you look back and see it as a whole piece.
Well, speaking of looking back, when did you know you wanted to become an actor?
Wow. Back to the Future. Probably. I remember watching Back to the Future. I remember being obsessed with films when I was young, and then also discovering theater. I discovered films first, the way that most kids do, going to the video store, that being my favorite time of the day, sitting there and watching a VHS until it was threadbare, and then wanting to go back to get the next VHS. So I was obsessed with watching films and watching them over and over and over and over and over again. And then I discovered that I was obsessed with story because I fell in love with the theater and realized, that's even in a way more exciting for me as an actor because you're seeing what that person, there's nothing to hide behind. You just get to watch the actor be the actor on stage. So I fell in love with that. And I think when I found out that like Marty McFly was a job, and I was like, that guy, that's like a thing he gets to go and do every day and then like get paid money to do it. And the idea that you have that much fun and make a career out of it. Once I knew that, I was sold. I was telling people I was going to be an actor when I was 5 years old. I mean, really before I knew what that meant.
And parents on board with you following in Marty's footsteps?
My parents were phenomenal. For what now, when I look back at how terrifying that must have been to be like, you want this dream that seems so inaccessible and that they had no experience with. There was nobody in my family who had really done that. My grandmother had done a little bit of stage acting when she was young, but like there was no path for that. And to their credit, my mother I think she deeply believes that if you see your kid is into something, you just support it. And so she scrambled together some money to send me to theater school here in LA at USC, and it changed my whole life. Yeah.
What did you study at USC? What kind of acting?
They do a Bachelor of Fine Arts. Well, they have a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Fine Arts. I did the Bachelor of Fine Arts program at USC, and you just learn a ton of stuff. There's no real method to the madness over there. I think maybe other theater schools, Carnegie Mellon or something, are maybe a little bit more dialed in with like this. We're teaching Stanislavski, we're teaching method. At USC, it was like, we're going to just throw kind of everything at you. So we had a lot of movement classes, and then that movement teacher would leave, so we had a new movement class, and then we had voice, Kristen Linklater stuff. But you would have teachers that were teaching you opposite things. They would be like, that's garbage, don't listen to that. And people got really frustrated because they thought, you're teaching me the opposite stuff. For me, that was great. I was like, there's clearly no one way of doing all of this, so I liked getting a grab bag of stuff and getting to put it all into the toolbox and then figuring out for which job you're going to use which thing. So
do you tend to sort of utilize different skill sets depending on the role in terms of building a character and finding yourself into that world?
That's a good question. And, to be perfectly frank, I don't get the opportunity to play many other roles at this point, which is the blessing and curse side of getting to do Suits. My time is taken up. I always try and work on other things. I did a play last year. I'm doing a little feature with a friend in March. I made a short film with my fiance last year. So I'm always finding ways to stay busy, but to actually really dig in the way that I had imagined wanting to dig in as an actor, there's not too much opportunity because Suits is a big part of my life. And that's the struggle of Suits, is that the tools that I used like in that first season to figure out what Mike Ross was and what he did and how he operated, and we were inventing the show. All those tools now I'm used to them, and that doesn't mean they're not still fun or that storylines don't come along that get to like push me in a new direction, that I get to use some new tool. But it's like I know those tools pretty well. I know which ones to reach for, and I know how it works. So the challenge now of Suits is sort of figuring out how to not get lazy, I guess, which I succeed at with sometimes some days more than others. The creator of the show is actually sitting here, so I want to say that. I had to say it out loud. If you see me keep checking in with him as I say things.
just making sure periodically.
Yeah, give him a clap. That's Aaron Korsh. Thanks for the job, Aaron.
And just periodically checking in to make sure you still have it as the
that
Q&A
I have the
goes
job.
along.
I just see him doing this.
Yeah. If he leaves, we're all in trouble. Something bad has no. So Patrick, let me ask you, when you graduated from school, you did a lot of sort of guest work on television shows.
Yeah, a ton. Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's an element of that is very fun because you're like, oh, I graduated, I'm working, and this is what I wanted to do. Does it create an experience, though, different from the one we just spoke about, where you're sort of not building those characters again, and you're coming in and being like, I saw him do it, and then you leave because your role is over?
Yeah, for me, the time that I spent doing guest star stuff, and I'm really lucky to have gotten so much of it. Any actors in the room know these are hard jobs to get, and it took a long time to start getting them, and then slowly but surely I started chipping away at them. And the lessons I learned, I would love to say they were acting lessons, and I was really getting to like dig into a lot of different character stuff. But I think ultimately I was so young and so new to the business that for me that was just like learning how to manage fear and expectations, like learning how to just deal with a set, deal with maybe a cast that was, because these shows, they're just different universes. Like sometimes you go to a show and everybody's really happy and they all get along really well and it's supportive and creative. Maybe the show's not good, but the process is great. And then another show you go on to and everybody hates each other. No one will talk to each other. And you are the person that's there. It's like, I have to do my job either way. Like I don't get to be part of your energy. I don't get to be like I'm not pissed off because I've been sitting around for 3 weeks with a producer who doesn't know what he's doing. Like I don't have that. I just know I have to come in and say these lines. So learning how to do your job in the face of whatever is going on was really the lesson I was learning in those years, again, to differing amounts of success. And just focus on, because as an actor, you're there for one thing and one thing only. You have to do your job. And I carried that with me through there. Yeah.
I mean, when you're sort of jumping around from experience to experience, auditioning over and over is also a part that comes along with that. We took some questions from the audience, and Sarah wanted to know, how do you prepare for auditions?
I haven't had an audition in a really long time. Who is Sarah Wallinger? Hi, Sarah. I just want to put a face to a name. Again, it's different with every job. It's different with every job. I read it a lot. I just read. It's kind of like what Anthony Hopkins says. I've always taken a lot from that. Just read it until it makes sense to you and it's in your body. And then I just work on it a lot with my lady. We both sort of have a similar approach to the work. I do a ton of research if that's like important and relevant. Yeah, I just try and get it into my body as much as possible, because that moment when you get into the audition room and suddenly there's all these people you don't know and all that fear and anxiety starts, flaming up. I want to have the stuff kind of ingrained into my body, into my mind, so I don't have to think about it too much, because as soon as I start thinking, then it all falls apart. And just try and find a way to have fun with it. This is always supposed to be fun, right? And I feel like in audition rooms, they're watching even less for how you're doing it, because they want to see that you can play with them and you can change it. So it's less about like making a decision and going, this is how I'm going to do it, and more saying like, this is how I'm going to do it today. I don't know. This is where I'm at with it. But if you want to give me something else, I can totally try it that way too. So being adaptable, I guess.
Working off of that, David, is David?
Where's David?
Right.
Hi, David.
How long did it take for you to be comfortable in the audition room in front of the camera?
Oh, never. I'm still not comfortable. That is, I mean, and talk about going back to Suits. That is the gift of a suit. Like, I'll find myself in situations on Suits now where it's like there's, 3 cameras, 8 producers at the monitor, 3 boom guys, 1 guy's asleep on the floor. Cameras pushing in real quick. Like, there's just some insane setup that I'm like, wow, if I had been and I'll be with a guest star on the show and he'll be all nervous. I'll be like, what are you nervous about? We're fine. We're all friends here. And then I realized, like, oh, no, this is an insane thing that we do. And this is an insane amount of pressure. But because I know all of these people and because I've had the opportunity to do it every single day, this gets to just feel normal to me. And then you go into another set, like I just did some guest star stuff on another show. And all of a sudden I'm right back to day one of like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. There's a little bit more confidence than when I was just starting out, but it's brand new because it's brand new people. And so, it's never that easy. If I really want a job, that's like the worst. If I'm like super excited and you want to make a really good impression and I want to do my best work, I think we all know that experience of like, oh, that's clearly when I'm going to make a bigger fool of myself. So I'm still trying to navigate that, which is like, how do I want something but still just like approach it like I would approach an episode of Suits. Like, do the work, but not be obsessive about making the best possible impression that I can on these people, because nothing turns people off faster than like you wanting them to like them, which is the great paradox of this whole thing we're doing here. Yeah, it's frustrating. I wish I had a better answer for you.
Well, what do you remember about the first time you either read the script for Suits or sort of got in the room for Suits? I mean, was this one of those roles you're talking about that you wanted very badly and you were afraid of turning them off?
Yeah. Well, this was one of those great moments where it just synced up, though. And I'm sure Aaron would have a similar story. I think we've talked about this, where it just was right. I had been fired from a job, from a pilot, and it was a pretty public firing the way they are. I mean, no one really cared, but it was like written up, and it was like, he's been replaced on that pilot, and went through that whole process where I was like, oh, clearly I'm never going to be an actor, and I'm terrible. I'm going to move home, and this is all over, and I failed myself and my family. So I had that whole process, and then got an audition, and it was like, well, I guess I'll just go on this audition, even though I failed my whole life and my family, and I was just like, do this. And it was a part of a guy who was at the bottom of the barrel. He had run out of luck, basically, to run out of opportunities, and he kind of has one shot. Just like one moment where he has to like say, give me this opportunity. I've been through the ringer, and I'm telling you, Harvey, I'm going to be the best lawyer you've ever seen in your life. Give me this shot. Nobody deserves it more, and nobody's going to work harder for it than I am. And that was the audition. And so for me to walk into a room after going through this whole sort of thing and then having survived it, was a great nightmare of anybody, really, but especially actors, getting fired from something and being embarrassed and feeling like you're not enough. And then you get to go into a room and just look at these producers in the eye and go like, give me this job. I promise you, literally saying these words to them in the audition, give me this job. I promise I will not fail. I'll work harder than anybody you've ever seen. Those are the easiest words that could have left my mouth. So, I mean, I wish I was a better actor. Really, I was just like going in and putting on a suit that didn't fit and like just saying these words to these people, but they couldn't argue the sincerity of the way that I was saying them, and it made a lot of sense to me. I just felt like I'm totally ready for this. Like, I am just waiting for someone to let me go. And to their credit, and this was Aaron's first show too, so I think we've always had a kinship in that we're sort of always figuring this thing out together. And when we were shooting the pilot, it was really like, let's go. Like, if something was in the page and it was working, and then you'd let us try something new, like it was a different experience than just being the actor the way we talked about it before, which is just you're there to just do your job and let everybody else tell you what to do. I mean, Aaron and the producers at Hypnotic welcomed us in and just said, like, this isn't funny right now, let's make it funny, or this moment isn't working the way we need it to. So we all felt this like insane amount of ownership over the thing, and I was ready for that at the time.
And it's interesting because obviously, I think you're talking about being ready for an opportunity, but I also think the reality sometimes of being at the top of a call sheet for the first time can be very different when
almost the top.
Yeah.
Almost
near the top, top
top-ish.
Top-ish. But I mean, that that comes with a lot of responsibility too. There's a lot of tone setting, and there's sort of. And
Yeah,
I'm curious
totally.
what you feel like you learned about sort of the on-set culture from that.
That's a great question. I'd learned a lot from watching other people do things on the sets that we had talked about before. And by that point, I'd had a lot of experience on lots of different sets. So I'd seen what to do and I'd seen what not to do. And I'd always been impressed. I remember like I was in Old School, it was one of my first jobs. And like that was, I didn't know how a set worked. It was the first set I'd ever been on. But I remember Vince Vaughn, you know, buying sushi like every 2 weeks. He'd buy sushi for the crew or whatever, and I was like, "That's incredible! That's the nicest thing in the world." And I saw like what a huge difference it made. So just like the operating of a day, and I was like, "Sure, like Vince Vaughn's doing pretty well on this film. He can afford to buy sushi for everybody." And so right from there, I was just like, the crew is everything. You have to respect your crew. You have to honor them, and you can't expect production to do it because they have business needs that they're meeting and they have bottom lines. Like it is your responsibility, and so I took that very seriously from year one. And not just that, but with the cast. I'm a photographer too, so I would give these like books at the beginning of every season to try and like. You know, it was never for any purpose other than to say thank you and to say like I'm grateful that we have this family and I'm grateful that we're here. And we truly have like the greatest crew in Toronto and in cities like Toronto and Vancouver now. Crews are getting overloaded, as we know. Unfortunately, so much work is leaving there and not here. And so, you know, you're lucky if you get a great crew in these cities. And we have an incredible group of people. Some of them we call the OGs, the original gangsters that have been there since day one. Like Michael Seuss, our A camera operator. He has literally shot every frame of A camera of Suits for 7 years. And you're like, this show just wouldn't be this show unless that guy was running the camera. He knows it now. He knows it inside out. So yeah, I learned a lot about you know, keeping morale up, not letting the I've definitely had my dark days. Definitely had my moments where I haven't pulled this off. But I think on the whole, always making sure that the crew feel valued and that the cast feel heard and that everybody feels like they're, again, that idea of ownership of the thing, that everybody feels like they're a part of it, not just the above the line crowd, but the people who are showing up every single day to shoot this thing. And, you know, these are long days. You guys know, like you're away from your families. These crews are away from their family for like 9 months of the year. They basically just say goodbye in the morning and goodnight at night. So yeah, it's a long answer to your question. But.
When you started work on the show and when you got the role, what were the important things that you did to build the character of Mike in your mind and in your body?
I just really embraced nervousness. I was anxious, and I said, well, let's use it. I had been confident in the audition, like I had spoken about before, but then when it came time to shoot the thing, I was like, I am so out of my element here. You know, again, like Mike, I was like, I feel like I've oversold, and I don't want to underdeliver. And so I felt like just embrace the nervousness. So all that great stuff in season one of me, like, you know, scouring out of a room when Jessica showed up or whatever, like you're discovering those relationships for the first time. And I just had the most fun being the guy that like dropped folders everywhere. Again, kind of a Michael J. Fox homage, like Secret to My Success or something, you know, just like falling everywhere, trying to change his clothes, kicking his shoes off, never knowing or saying the right thing, always like kind of actively searching for a way to make a fool out of myself. You know, and seem like the fish, the little fish in the big pond. So that was where I started with it. Now, obviously, that's changed as Mike has grown into his own little miniature Harvey Specter. But I'm always looking for a way that he's going to approach it differently than Harvey. I mean, we kind of use each other for that. It's like, okay, if you're going to go that direction around a problem, let me come at it this way. You know, or if I come in and I'm like, I really feel like I want to go this way, you'll see him naturally go, okay, then I can take this route. And so you're always kind of the balancing act for any story point or problem that comes up.
What in those, I mean, then or now, I mean, what has surprised you about the endurance it takes physically to sort of pull off hour-long episodic television?
It's so nice to get questions like this because nobody ever gets it. It's tough. This first season of this show was one of, I don't remember any of it, to be honest. And then throw onto that the amazing honor of getting to have done that first year and then getting nominated for a SAG award at the end of that season was just it made no sense to me, and there was no real time to process it. I was exhausted. I was emotional. I felt underprepared. I learned a lot about having to take care of yourself, having to make sure you're getting enough sleep, you're eating the right stuff, because it is a marathon. And, you know, I'm lucky. We do 16 episodes. So many people do 22, 23 episodes. I literally don't know how people manage to pull that off. It's a huge amount of work, and I think it's a crazy job. I was saying this year to somebody, I don't know any other job where people work the hours they work on this. It's not so much for actors, because we get a break. If, you know, you usually get a little bit of a break, but when you think about crew members, they're working literally like 15 hours a day every single day for 9 months. I mean, that equals an insane amount of time. Yeah, I don't know. It broke me. So, I mean, it broke me for the first 2 years.
So what did you do? I mean, is it just you adjust to it?
You get used to it. You get used to allowing yourself to freak out. That was a big one. I had a lot of freakouts. I just had a lot. You don't even know, you don't know what shape they're coming. They're not rational. You're not like, oh, I'm tired and now I'm going to be angry. It's just like one day something happens and you're just angry about it. You're so angry, and then all of a sudden you're crying and you're like, I don't know why I'm crying right now. And then as you learn it, you go like, oh, okay, this is the time in the year when I just lose my shit. And it usually comes around episode 9. And so now you can just go, this is me losing my shit. You actually get less people involved in it now. May do it a little less publicly. And you just sort of go home and take deep breaths and have a bath and go, okay, I'm just losing my shit now. And having a great support system helps. You know, having my fiance Troy, and she was on a show at the same time, so we got to really compare notes of the process. It was like, oh, okay, you're going through this now. I understand that. You know, a sounding board basically for that process. So I think it's just about, but I think it's about any job. I mean, I was young when I did this, my first real job. So the pressures of any sort of career, you sort of freak out and you don't quite know how to handle them. And then you get older and you realize, like, oh, this is what adults do. Responsibility and learn to play with others. So that was it.
Well, I mean, you know, in the conversation about growing up, it's interesting because as you've grown, you know, Mike, your character, has also grown. I mean, you've spent sort of 6 years. I mean, negligible time passes on the show in a way. But I mean, I'm curious, like, what has been interesting for you about playing someone for 6 years and bringing them through sort of like a human evolution as well?
Yeah. I mean, I have no idea where this train is going. I don't think Aaron does either. Like, none of us do. We're figuring it out. And so you can't plan anything. And so it's not like doing a film where it's like, and this is the first act, and then he's going to experience this, then we're going to end it here, and I can see or it's doing a play, like, here's the script, and this is where it ends, and this begins, so we're going to beat it out, and this is what it is. You know, it's a train that we're building the tracks for as we go. And I think any show, even with the shows that have a plan, essentially everyone's doing that. You're just building it in the direction that it wants to go in. It's a very like fluid, alive, organic process. So there's no real time to think about where you are or where you're headed. You're just sort of reading the script that you're going to start shooting tomorrow, and you're like, let's go. I don't know. What's the thing that I'm interested in today? And for me, as you said, I'm getting older and getting more mature, and you know, my life is heading in certain directions, and so I think there's just always a lot of parallels between those two things, because the things I relate to in my life are the things that I'm drawn to in Mike, and so that sense of maturity or responsibility or falling in love, you know, or you know, finding your partner in life, like those are all things that are really resonating with me, and so I think naturally they sort of just blend into him.
Sort of on that same topic, Susan, who is...
Hi, Susan.
Wants to know what keeps the show fresh for you in doing season after season?
That's a great question. I mean, the people. I always come back to the people, but you know, not just the people that I act with, but the writers in the room. It's like the directors, like everybody comes to Suits and tries to make it the best it can be all the time. And this is my first experience on a series this long, but that feels rare. that everybody is like always looking for the way, even if it's going to take an extra 10 minutes to get it done. You know, there's that moment in any creative process where you're like, yeah, I could just do this and then it'll be fine. And I've experienced it so much on other sets. We can just do this thing and we'll be out of here 20 minutes earlier and it'll be fine. And then we'll move on to the next thing, or we'll get some more sleep, or we can all go get some food or something. On our show, there's always, everybody wants to do. Well, some days, not so many people, but most of the time, people want to do that extra thing to make it great. They're like, we can do this, or we can make it really great and do this, and maybe try another option and do it this way. And I truly believe that's the thing that has made our show a success, and that people are drawn to that, and that makes it, for me, fun to go to work, because you know that you're surrounded by people that give a shit. And that's rare in anything in this world, especially after 7 years. I think it'd be really easy to just go on autopilot now. And there are some days you do. I mean, you have to survive. But the fact that people are always, like our camera operator, again, Michael Seuss, I can't tell you how many times he like will rush on to set and like have to move something to get it right, or he'll get pissed at someone because they left the glass the wrong way and there's a reflection. Like he's so absurdly obsessed with detail and making sure that it's accurate and that everybody's on the same page. So I mean that's when you show up into that environment, it's infectious, and you go, well, I have to bring my A game here because everybody else is. I don't want to be lazy.
In the conversation about sort of just going with the motions, you know, you also don't do that in the sense that you're a producer on the show. You've directed multiple episodes of the show.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it that made you want to be more than just sort of an actor on Suits?
I think that's always been my way. I mean, even when I was doing theater, I was running a theater company in college. I've always loved directing. I've always, you know, I like this job. I like this job a lot, and I like all the different facets of it. I like working with people in different departments. I like talking story with Aaron. I like talking to writers about their process. Sometimes I think in the first season, like I inserted myself too much into things that like I wasn't qualified to insert myself into. But I don't regret doing that, but I did maybe regret the way that I did it, and understanding that everybody has to be able to do their job. But what I've learned now is like this is an incredible opportunity for me to get to do things that most people don't get to do. So the fact that I got to like now have directed 3 episodes of Suits, like I don't know what the budget of our show is, but it seems significant. And the idea that a guy with no directing experience on camera got the opportunity to direct like 3 hours of this multi-million-dollar show, it's a huge amount of responsibility, but also so lucky. And I took it so seriously that I was given that opportunity, because that's a huge thing I want to do with my life. Being an actor is something I always want to do, but I think, and I don't know if you guys relate to this, but we live in a world now where you have to be multiple things. Like it's not quite the same as it was, where you just sort of skate by and you have a contract or a deal with ABC, and you just a lot of people get to be those actors, but I don't even want to be that kind of actor. Like I want to be able to treat, I saw a picture of Sidney Pollack back in the room, took a picture of it. I mean, a guy like that, you know, he's an actor, he's a great actor, he could be an actor. If you need him to act, he'll be there and he'll be solid, but he's got way more that he's interested in his sphere. That's just like one piece of it. And I never want to make acting the desperate thing where I'm like have to get that gig that it's like every single job is just this sort of I just have to get it. It's like I want to want it. And if I can't have it in this moment, then I want to be working on something else and making my own thing. And I want to be able to produce and create content and learn how to like shepherd a story that I might be passionate about from one place to another. And it just feels like that's naturally where people are headed in this industry. And if you really want to have a dynamic career, you got to be open to all of that. So I was always so interested, and I had this opportunity where they would let me do it. I'm just so grateful for it.
When
Yeah.
you read a script, I mean, outside of Suits, only in the sense that it's someone you know very well, when you read a script for the first time and are introduced to a character for the first time,
Right.
what are the qualities of these characters that you're drawn to? Like the kind of person you like to play?
It's different for me now, you know, because like right now I'm reading a lot of scripts of friends and stuff, and I'm drawn to the darkness just because, you know, Suits has darkness in it, but as a character, I think it's relatively light. I'm being really drawn to people with, right now, like I want to know the problem, and I want to know how they're not dealing with their problem. and avoiding it. I think that makes like great conflict, and for me that's so rich, is like, what's the thing you're not processing and why aren't you processing it, and what are the ways that you are avoiding processing your problem, which probably has a lot to do with my own life, but we'll get into that in a different Q&A. You know, I'm really interested in that internal fire, that internal conflict, that internal thing that just people are not, they're too afraid to share with the world, and they're not processing it properly, and all the damage they can do to their sphere because they're not being honest with themselves. And I think if what we do has value in the world, it's about watching people go through those things and being as accurate as we can to show the world you don't have to do that. You know, we're all here to like try and teach a lesson through the stories that we've experienced. And so if we can do anything of service as actors, it's really accurately portray that sort of that mess that is humanity, and hope that watching us try and process that will help people in their own lives to be a little bit clearer about who they are and what they want.
For sure. I mean, if you want to talk about, you know, mess and collateral damage, when Mike turned himself in after, you know, years of masquerading as a lawyer, I really blew apart the show in such an exciting way. And I'm curious what your reaction was to finding out he was going to do something that was on some level finally a very selfless thing.
I was just so happy that we got to head in the direction of the show, and I haven't watched any of the prison season or whatever, and I hear mixed things. I hear people are like really happy it happened, and then people go like, I hated this season, you had to go to prison. But I think either way, however you felt about it, it had to be done. Like, we had to get through it. Mike had to pay his dues, and I think it was so brave of the show to do that, because, you know, we could have tried and stretched this problem out, and this initial thing that we've been doing since the beginning. We could have made this last, you know, another 2 seasons. But I think ultimately it's a testament to our fan base to say we want to get rid of it. We want to reinvent the show, and we want to say, like, these characters exist without the initial problems that we set them up with. I don't want to put words in your mouth or what you do, but that's what it felt like from the inside. It felt brave, and it felt like, no, let's make Mike pay for what he did. Let's take him in that direction, and let's see where it goes, and then we'll get him out, and then we'll see where the show begins there. And to say, and I can say, and I can't say too much about the back end of the 6th season that we just finished shooting, but I haven't had more fun on this show than the last 6 episodes that we've shot in a really long time. And to be able to say that 6 seasons into a show, you know, there's been a lot of stuff in the middle that I wasn't having the best time. Truthfully, even the prison stuff, like, I was so happy to go to prison because I was like, oh, it'll be different. It'll be a whole different world. But then I got in there and I'm like, I am sitting in a cell every single day. It was nice not to have to wear suits. I mean, I literally went to work and just like put on the same costume, and then that was it. I was done for the day. But ultimately, I was just like in tiny cells, as you are in prison, it turns out, shooting these scenes. And it got really boring really, really fast. And I loved Eric Paladin. I loved all the people I was working with in prison. It's just the actual technicality of shooting in a tiny room is not that exciting. But now coming back out into this back 6, I've just sort of like shot out of prison the way somebody probably would, just like, I want to make the most of my life. I want to do something different. So Mike is on this great trajectory heading out, and I'm having like more fun than I've had in so long. And that's rejuvenating. That's really exciting to, after all this time, be able to have so much fun.
And I would imagine too, you know, if he's sort of exploring this world in a new way, there have to be sort of like some surprises for you. And it must be nice, like you're saying, 6 years in, to be surprised by the person you've sort of lived with for 6 years too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and how he gets to react to new things, and you know, to be in a position of authority where he wasn't before. Like, it just made me realize, oh, there's so much more story that you can tell. As long as everybody's on board and people are interested in the story, it's like, there isn't just the story of Mike Ross who lied and then got caught and then paid his dues and then it's over. I mean, that could be the story, and if the world decided that's all they were interested in, that would be the story. But, you know, as long as we stay interested in what could come next after something, then it can go in any direction we want, as long as people are willing to stick around and check it out. Thanks, man. Thank you.
I didn't mean to interrupt your sip of water.
No, oh yeah, I'll take a sip of water.
Well, I want to ask you this, because one of the things that I've always really loved about the show, and having sort of spoken to a lot of your co-stars, is there really is like this feeling of like a troupe of people who are making the show, and it feels like you're getting a lot of like classic partner work that you would in the theater with some of these scenes where it's really just two people sparring. And I'm curious what it's been like for you, and feel free to speak for your cast if you want to, about like building that sort of familial relationship within the 5 or 6 of you.
Yeah, I mean, and some days we are shocked on set that this show is as successful as it is. And it's not to denigrate the show or anything, but we're like, we literally, like, we'll be in the same office. We'll be in Harvey's office, and we'll be like, we have done probably 1,500 scenes in this office. And there's only so much you can do in an office. You can move to here, and walk to the desk, or I could be by the window. Maybe I'm touching Harvey's balls. He walks through the thing. It's like there's only so many combinations of things that can occur, and yet somehow people still want to watch Harvey and Mike in the office. They still want to see Donna walk into the office after they've heard Harvey say something. They're still interested in that, and I don't think it's just because people are boring and they just like the same thing over and over again. I think it's, again, the people. I think it's like they don't want to see the repetition. They want to see the slight differences. They want to see the different ways that we are going to approach this new problem together. And it's I don't know, it's just such a testament to the, like, you can strip away all of the things that might make other shows like a huge special effects, or you're in brand new environments every single week, which is all really interesting, and it sounds exciting to me as an actor to get to be in all those different places. But there's something, like you said, it's almost theatrical, which is like, no, I just want to see that character and maybe that character in the kitchen go. And somehow it works. And I think it's just because the writing is terrific, and then the actors are always coming and trying to find a way to, like, make it pop and make each other laugh. And it's such sort of like a basic equation, but it still works.
Absolutely. Have you found that, I mean, because you all have really worked so closely together now for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you find that sort of your approaches to the material like start to mirror one another's, or are those differences still there?
I think we're all totally different machines. Yeah, like Rick Hoffman, God bless him. He's spinning off this earth, and we all, in every good way, like, he comes into it and he is just like on fire with material or whatever. Like, there's no filter. So it's like he comes in and it's just a whirlwind, and it happens, and it's like literally one of the most captivating things to watch, because it's just so, and it's hard to describe, but he's an amazing actor and it's amazing to watch. But then Sarah Rafferty comes in, and she's got a ton of theater training, and it is, like, beat it out, and she's really fascinating to direct too, because she's done so much work at home. Whereas Rick, I think he's read it and he's just like, this is it, this is what we're doing, and it's going. Like, Sarah is like, this is it, and it's this beat and then this beat. And then I'll come in and be like, could you just say that line differently? And she'll be like, wait, what do you mean? And then she's got to think it. But then she goes and she thinks about it, and she goes, okay, let me try it. And then she comes in and it's brilliant. And then Gabriel's like, huh? What is this? All right, sure, okay, I guess. And then he'll, like, say it 5 times and it's brilliant, but he just has to say it 5 times and then it's brilliant. Like, everybody has a completely different process. And none of our processes mimic anybody, but we have learned how to, like, shepherd their process. It's like, okay, Rick needs to bounce around the room 6 times and then he'll land and we'll do the thing. Or, like, directing Rick is the greatest, because, like, you'll go in and be like, Rick, I was wondering if you could, just on this line, could you come back here? Nope, can't do it. I was like, I'll tell you why I can't do it. I can't do it because I can't do it. And I'll tell you why I just said I wasn't going to do it, and that's why I'm going to do it here. And you'll be like, okay. And the first time I directed, I would be like, Rick, please, just do this for me. And you beg him, and he'd be like, and there'd be a lot of fight. And then finally, this time I last directed him, I was like, I just learned to be like, okay, you don't want to do it? That's great. And I walk away. And as soon as you walk away, it goes, wait. I'll do it. Okay, no, let me. Oh, that's what you meant. Yeah. Of course I'll do it. So it's like directing them is even better, because now you find all the, like, you just learn to, like, how do I sell this to Gabriel? How do I sell this to Sarah? And then as soon as they get on board, they're like the greatest group of people ever. I mean, they're so on point, they're so prepared, and we have a blast together still after all this time.
Well, lastly, we're going to finish up with one question from the audience, and this one is from Jesse.
Hey, Jesse.
Jesse wants to know what advice you would give yourself now at the start of your career? Basically, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of something that isn't trite, because some of that trite stuff's true, but I don't want to say trite things. It's probably going to be trite. Just to trust myself a whole lot more than I did. People are sometimes surprised. They think that I seem super confident. I'm probably like the most scared person that I know. And for me, this whole business has just been a constant battle with fear and anxiety and not feeling like I'm good enough or feeling like people are going to like me enough. It's like the worst job for me being an actor. I totally should not be doing this on a personal level. But in some ways, I think that's what makes me good at what I do too, is that I'm so hypersensitive to so many things that it helps me to, prepare, just to like be prepared for every inevitability and to think everything through so much that it's painful sometimes. But if I was to talk to my younger self, I would just say, relax and trust yourself a little bit more. Trust that like, as long as you're doing the work and you're putting in the time and you're staying really curious, that's enough. And that feeling of it being enough is the thing that people respond to when they see you walk into a room and they're like, maybe he's not doing it right the way we want it to be done right now, but that thing, that quality of ease, that quality of comfort, that quality of joy in your work, that's the thing that makes someone go, oh, like you might not be right for this, but we can't wait to have you back for the next thing or the next thing. And then eventually that thing is a show that you're on the air for 7 years. Yeah, so trust yourself.
Well, when the show returns on January 25th, there'll be an episode directed by this guy right here, mid-season premiere. Patrick, thank you so much for
you guys
coming
so
out today.
much.
Thank you to all of you
for making the
for
time.
coming.
I really appreciate it.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Jarett.
You got it.